Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to talk about the Beverly Hillbillies Season 1. And for starters, I was not going to originally watch the whole season or any whole season of the series, but I thought that it would probably be a good idea to get acquainted with the show before I delved into the 15 focus episodes that we will be analyzing next week. So, overall, just for my first impression of the season was there were some weird things about the first episode. I mean, the first episode was really good. I watched it last year, and it was so good that I immediately watched the second episode. That's how good it was. It wasn't like with these other shows where I'm just I don't want to watch that. The weird part, though, I'm trying to get to it, because the episode is 32 minutes, technically, because they have this whole story that happens, and it's the pilot, and it's really, really good. And then they have these end credits, and it's really weird because they have a modern TV thing where it says, now this is what's going to happen in future episodes. And they show these clips of future episodes, and I thought it was really strange because in one of the clips, I'm just waiting for the ad to finish up, because in order to watch this show I have to watch it on what they call Free V on Amazon, which means they have to have these stupid ads, which is annoying. Now they're advertising Your Honor, which they ended on a terrible note after an incredible season. That probably wouldn't be good to advertise right now, honestly. I'm just 25 seconds more, so I guess I should just continue. The first episode, it was perfect because it didn't feel like they were trying to be stereotypes. It didn't feel like they were trying to tell some sort of a one-dimensional sitcom story, like a lot of these modern sitcoms do. It felt like they were telling a genuine story with real characters, with just a lot of over-the-top humor, a lot of great jokes. And so that's why it worked. It worked because although they had a lot of over-the-top comedy, it was all rooted in reality. A lot of this stuff you could see in real life, a much toned down version of this stuff happening, a much less over-the-top version. And so everything really works because you can picture it. So there was this weird part at the end. I mean, I can't even... Is this Mr. Drysdale talking? This is weird. It's did they really do this for the first episode when it aired, where they have this 5-minute sequence at the end? Because they're showing these clips, and wait. Okay, that was a clip from an episode. But there was this one part that was really weird to me. Where is it? I apologize because it seems like I'm... Who's this? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Wait, was that the guy? Okay, this is the part. So there's this part where Mr. Drysdale talks in the voice box, and then Jed is like, "Oh, where are you coming from? I don't, are you inside the wall or something?" And then he starts like destroying the wall and tearing it down. And then we see Mr. Drysdale getting therapy because of that happening. And I swear, I don't remember when this happened at all in the season. And yet they referenced it later on in the season. Uh, they talk about he demolished 30 feet of wall. Can somebody, like, tell me when that was? Because I watched every episode. I tried to pay as close attention as possible. And I don't remember a single episode where he actually does that and he knocks down. Maybe it happened post credits. Like, I only watched to the credits after the first episode. It doesn't look like anything happens. It looks like they just come out and wave and then that's the end. And by the way, I got really, really, I wouldn't say sick. I just got really worn out of seeing pictures or just hearing about Kellogg's cornflakes, because I thought, it is really hilarious because it's 2023. I think that the Beverly Hillbillies are the only people in the face of the universe who are still talking about Kellogg's cornflakes. I mean, Kellogg's cornflakes, like, even old people don't even eat Kellogg's cornflakes. Like, they get Cheerios and shit like that. Like, nobody eats Kellogg's cornflakes. They eat Frosted Flakes. They eat Cocoa Puffs. They eat, like, Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Nobody eats that. Regular cornflakes, I mean, that's just hilarious, though, to see, like, they just constantly advertise every single episode. This is sponsored by Kellogg's Cornflakes over and over and over and over again. And it just makes me, like, want to face palm every episode, knowing that, like, these are some of the most generic cereal known to man. And they do advertise other Kellogg cereals, though, but at the beginning of every episode, at the end of the theme song, they have fucking Kellogg's cornflakes with Jed's face next to the fucking cereal box. So the story is all about, if you guys don't know by now, I mean, how many years has it been? 72, 82, 92... 2002, 2012. It's been 61 years since the original season came out. So if you haven't seen the show by now, then I don't even know why you're watching this video. So it's all about this family of hillbillies, and they moved to Beverly Hills after after getting a fortune from having their land get drilled for oil. And what I loved about this premise was the fact that it's such an innocent premise. It's such a fun and light story in comparison to, like, these modern shows where in these modern shows, it's always, like, all about how it's funny that people suffer, it's funny that people get hurt, and it's funny that they, like, live a life of trash. But these people are very, very humble, and they're very positive. They have a great attitude, they have a great intelligence, and they never really do anything bad the whole season. I mean, let's see. I guess a couple of times they misunderstand things a little bit too much, especially when it came to the psychiatrist near the end of the season. That was one of my least favorite stories, which we'll get into that. But other than that, like, they were very, very genuinely good people, and it didn't seem like they were suffering people. Like, it seemed like they knew how to budget. They knew how to survive. They knew how to live happily without like being like these modern sitcoms where it's like, oh look, how many coupons did you cut out today? Oh, I just spent 5 hours cutting coupons and my hands are sore. Ha 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 ha. Oh no, my wife just left me for another man. Ha 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 ha. Like, that's modern sitcoms. And in comparison to that, this show, the comedy is a lot more innocent, and the comedy is a lot more fun, and feeling like this is the type of comedy I want to watch. You know, I don't want to watch modern crap sitcom comedy where, you know, sometimes a lot of the times in modern sitcoms, they're always like laughing at people who are in their audience. And you see that a lot in Marvel movies, you know, when they have this humiliation of men and this like degradation of male characters and tokenization. You know, they're essentially like shitting all over their own audience. I mean, you just even saw that with Shazam 2, which I'm glad I didn't review that. You know, one of the actors from the movie, the actress happening to play a token white, the tokenized version of Snow White, you know, she shat all over the audience for giving the movie a bad review. And she said, no, you guys are wrong. It's a great movie. And you guys just want to hate everything. And it's like, see, this is why movies and TV are terrible nowadays. Is because the people who are in Beverly Hillbillies, they never would have attacked their own audience. They never would have gotten on Twitter and called their audience man babies and stuff like that. They never would have done anything like that because they were actual, genuine, good people in real life too. And, you know, just even just briefly looking at their stories of how they became actors, you can tell that, you know, they all struggled and that they all have these unique and interesting stories. Whereas the actors nowadays, you know, they don't really struggle very much at all. You know, they just get everything handed to them. And so when they're confronted with the reality, which is that, you know, not everyone's going to like them, you know, they're in this bubble and they can't stand to have their bubble broken. And the people from back then, from like this show, they knew that, you know, not everyone was going to like what they did. And they knew that they had to try different things. They knew that from their experiences that they had to adapt and survive. Which is why the show is so good. Because they would have been able to take the criticism in this show. Like, I hardly have any criticism, but if I did, they would have been able to handle it and use it to make a better next season. The people nowadays, they don't handle criticism at all. They just criticize back. And so they just end up making trash. And so I really loved the first episode. It was full of laughs. I think I laughed almost every other minute. And so now I'm just going to go through some notes that I wrote now that I've talked about my first impressions. Oh, I guess I should also rank the Hillbillies. Or I guess the Hillbilly cast. No, I'll just stick to the Hillbillies. So I would say that Granny is the best one. She was the one that made me laugh the most, even though she also had the most decisions that she made that I disagreed with. You know, like times where she got really jealous or where she was really closed-minded. Still, I thought that she was the best one. She was extremely hilarious. She had a lot of great moments, and she was easily the best hillbilly for me. In second place, I have to say, is Pearl. Now, Pearl, she's a character who leaves at the end of the season so that she can be on Petticoat Junction, which is kind of sad because she's the mother of one of the main characters on the show. In fact, it's almost kind of amazing that they never have her come back except for one more episode, it seems, from what I saw in the IMDb. And it's really weird to me, like, she is such an integral character to the series. In my opinion, it would be like, how could you do more without her? Even so, I thought she was a really likable character. Like, I liked her as a person a lot more than Granny. I also thought that she was capable of doing multiple sides, like multiple, variations of the same character. Like, she had the sweet side, and then she had this really angry and bitter side. And you were really able to see those different sides of her well, in comparison to other characters who were just kind of one-dimensional, even though they played that one dimension really well. Next up, I would say, is Jed Clampett, which he is another character where, he had quite a few good laughs, but I really thought that he was the most morally good character. Whenever something bad happened, he always straightened it out. Whenever they needed someone to help, he always helped. And he really had, like, the smartest brain of the group. And he was the best character in terms of, like, morals and values. And then next up would be... now, this is tough. We have two people left. Two hillbillies left. And I'm really torn. I'm really torn on this decision. I would say next up would be Ellie Mae. No, actually, no, it's not. Next up would be Jethro. I thought he had a ton of laughs, and he was very good at playing this character. Although it seemed like halfway through the season, him and Ellie Mae kind of got thrown to the side. And it felt like more than half of the season was really a lot more about, like, Granny and Pearl rather than, the main characters. So when Pearl left, I was kind of relieved a little bit, even though I still wanted to see more of her, because I thought, more of the season should have focused on Jethro and Ellie Mae. Like, at a certain point, she just became kind of background pretty girl, and he just became kind of background strong guy. And he had, they both had great moments throughout the entire season. But if I was to rank them, this is just how I would rank them. And lastly would be Ellie Mae. I felt like her character was she was a good character. And if it was based on, like, the first couple episodes, I probably would have put her at the top. They had this great comedy with her and her clothes getting too small or something because she's, and they had all this great comedy with that and how she dresses like a boy for some reason, and she likes to wrestle a lot, and there was a lot of great comedy with her in the first half. But then they had it to where it's like, okay, she's a girl, so she's got to go on all these dates, and she's got to possibly get married, And it felt like, this is really sudden. This is really soon for her to be, getting into like these heavy relationships where she's talking about, what did they call it? Like corking and sparking or something? Stuff like that. It felt like they were really rushing into things because they didn't know what to do with her character. And I don't think that's true, though, because they did like 9 seasons of this show. So if like this is all that they could come up with for her character, then they wouldn't have even gotten to a 9th season. So I just felt like her character, number one, her story was basically getting into romances, kind of, and then misunderstanding or just falling out of them. And then in the second half, she's like literally in the background the whole time, not really doing anything. Like, she becomes the Dr. Dolittle character where it's like, oh, look, she's playing with the pet lion that she got, and oh, look, she's playing with the pet skunk. Oh, look, she's playing with the animal over there. Oh, look, she's at the pool outside, and she's going swimming with the cat that she taught how to swim. And it's like, that's all that really happens with her character in the second half. And it was really fucking irritating because her character was so good, and I don't know, it just felt like she really got shoved to the side in the second half. So, I'm really almost tempted to watch the rest of the series just to see like where her character goes. Like, does her character get more stories that are, more interesting than just like, oh, look, there's a guy and she might marry him, and it's like, who fucking cares? Like, enough with the, because once you have people get into a relationship on a show, that becomes really boring because then you have to come up with relationship problems, or they could just get together forever and then you wouldn't have any story left. Like, what would be the story after that? Nothing. Like, you'd have to move on to someone else. So it was really like weird how like quickly, I mean, when did they start having her go on a date? Might have been episode 7 or no, episode 8 or 9. So yeah, like really, really soon into the series, which was really weird. It just, I don't know, like, I didn't like that her character had to do that so fast. I felt like she deserved a couple of better stories in the first season. But that's something else to talk about, is in the first season, a lot of it is kind of held down by the Pearl side story. Like, there's this whole other show going on in this completely different part of the country with Jethreen and Pearl, and it felt like, why are we devoting so much time with this? I don't know if they knew that they were going to lose her at the end of the season, so that's why they just had a ton of stuff with her in the first season. But if it were me, I would have just had her featured in a side story in every like 5 episodes. But instead, she's like in almost every episode of the whole season. And then she actually moves in with them, and it's like, oh shit. Like, I was kind of worried. Excuse me, sorry. So now I am finally going to get on to the notes that I took over the course of kind of like a month, I guess. A little under a month. So one of the funniest jokes, or I have a lot of funny jokes that I'll talk about. There was a funny joke with Jethro where he was talking about how this one woman wanted to kiss him, or she's talking about cookies, and she made him cookies, and he was like, I took the cookies and I ran off, and she started chasing me, and because she was like, would you rather have the cookies or would you rather kiss me or something? And that was really hilarious. Like, that was one of the funniest things. And then it was even funnier when Jed is like, someday I'm going to have a long talk with you. And I think that was the first time in the series where he says that. And, that's like an iconic line now. Like, I'm going to have a long talk with you. And it was just so perfectly executed. Like, you understood exactly what Jed meant. And it was just so funny. And it was such a great little story. And I wonder if we ever get to meet that character too, because if I were writing it, I would have had them meet her character. So, next up, another highlight would be the Clampetts being freaked out when they see kids dressed in Halloween masks on Halloween. I thought that whole Halloween trick-or-treat sequence was funny. Like, it was funny, like, seeing Jed genuinely freaked out, and just, he was scared out of his mind when he saw this kid, because he was like, oh, I feel terrible, and that was great. And then another highlight was Grandma's shopping story. That one was kind of weird, though, because she paid like 10 cents instead of $10 or something, and she left with all of the groceries and I think the cart and everything, and it was weird how they never followed up on that. There were a couple of like sitcom-y type of moments like that where they would just tell a story for the sake of comedy, and then they never follow up and make sure that you knew, like, okay, this got resolved. I thought that was a little unfortunate, like, it would have been nice to at least see, like, I don't know, like a grocery person come to the door with Mr. Drysdale after that story. They could have just had like a brief shot with that. They could have even disguised like one of the main actors in a grocery store outfit, and then they wouldn't have even had to get a new actor to do that. So next up would be, now this was another weird thing too, by the way. Like, I know I criticized the whole Ellie Mae getting into romance. Another very weird thing was the Jethro and Miss Hathaway romance. That was another one where it felt like right off the bat this character, he's getting into a romance with Miss Hathaway. It just felt like it was way too fast and way too, like, really? Like, they're gonna go there now? Like, with this character who she's kind of freaked out by them. But I ended up really liking Miss Hathaway a lot, because she went from being like really, really like ugh in the first episode where she didn't know who they were. She did a complete like radical shift to where she was very understanding, and she helped them out whenever they needed it, and she got them out of bad situations with people. She turned out to be a really, really great character. But there was a hilarious scene where him and her were quote-unquote kissing by sounding out French words. And then, of course, Jed walks in and looks at them, and he says, I have to have a long talk with him. And they do make a good couple. Like, I'm not saying that Jethro and Miss Hathaway don't make a good couple. It was just so weirdly sudden that Miss Hathaway was like, she's like head over heels in love with him. Like, there was a point where Granny was making love potion, and then Miss Hathaway, she was ready for, Jethro to get spellbound by her, and I thought that was kind of fast, but it wasn't that bad. That's a little bit of a nitpick, I guess. But I just wanted to be fair and equal since I was criticizing the Ellie Mae romance stuff. I would say another hilarious scene was when Pearl packed up the entire lunch and took everything away because Mr. Brewster was not going to propose to her. And I love that. That was probably my favorite moment for her character. She had just been treating him like he's the most important man in the universe, and she was completely like subservient to him. And then all of a sudden, she's just had enough, and she's like, this guy is obviously not going to propose, and so bye-bye. And she literally like packs up this entire lunch, and it's just hilarious to watch because it's like she's picking like every single, like just this huge complicated like spread, and then she goes and gets the window curtains and tears those down too. That was really, really funny and really satisfying too, because I was getting sick and tired of Mr. Brewster's behavior too. It seemed like he really, well, we'll talk about that. It seems like certain episodes are written in a way where they're only focused on introducing a character or a simple idea. So that's what makes this more of a sitcom in comparison to show like The Andy Griffith Show. Normally I wouldn't like this, but the show is so funny I don't care. I like how it feels like a continuing story and not just like every episode is its own thing, and they're, and what I mean by that is, for example, there'll just be like a whole episode where it's all about that one character being introduced. Like, I kind of felt like there was this episode near the end where Ellie Mae becomes a secretary, and it almost felt like a roundabout way of introducing this other banker character. So I kind of like that because I don't know, it kind of takes the stress off things too, because they don't have to resolve everything in the episode, because they can resolve it next week. They can have like 4-part stories, they can have 5-part stories. It just doesn't have to be tied up in a bow in 20 minutes like Andy Griffith's Show. And then my favorite plot of the season was definitely the Clampetts trying to cure Mrs. Drysdale of her fake alcoholism problem. I really love that story, and I wish that they had done more with that. I kind of felt like that was weird, the way that that was like, they just kind of dropped that storyline, and it was like the best one. It was so funny watching like every single little thing get misconstrued to where they thought, oh my god, she really has a bad case of alcoholism. And then I love how certain things they do work, even though they'd be laughed at nowadays and called like amateur. Like, there's this part where the dog licks up this potion that was supposed to be given to Mrs. Drysdale, and the dog starts quote-unquote jumping by the show fast forwarding and rewinding his one trick that he does. Nowadays, if you did that in a movie, you'd have these YouTube channels that would make fun of that and say, oh, that's stupid. You couldn't accomplish that, and so you did this like editing trick. Haha, that's stupid. So I think it's funny that back then they did stuff like this and they cut these corners to accomplish these effects that they needed. And it was a smart thing to do. And it really worked. And I don't know where I was going with that, though. I don't know. It just seems like nowadays, like, people who make small productions get criticized for doing things that, like, big productions have done since the beginning of time. I guess that would be my point. I wonder how long these people can look at things and misunderstand their meanings. And how will the show evolve once they aren't so naive? By season 9, are they still going to be like, oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, what's that? Oh, you're saying that word? Oh, I thought you meant something completely different. And then I don't like the retconning. This is a part of sitcom TV that irritates me no matter what year. The plot with the family portrait dropped. Completely dropped. So they were supposed to have a family portrait painted. I guess they got it painted. I have no idea. The plot with them getting used to having servants in the house dropped. So I guess they're not going to have servants, which I think that's kind of unrealistic since it's a huge mansion. They should have at least had a couple of servants on the show. Mrs. Drysdale is apparently staying in Beverly Hills all of a sudden after she had that huge fit about them living there. She doesn't even act like she's that irritated with them. They just kind of brought her back in, and it's like, oh, there she is. And then I don't like, Sonny Drysdale is the one who Ellie was supposed to date. And I do not like Sonny very much. He's really, really creepy. Like, he is probably one of the creepiest characters I've ever seen. I also really don't like Jethreen. She's even creepier. And the creepiest part is how another actress voices over for her all the time. And she just really creeps me out, and I hope that those two disappear soon off the show. And then I said, wow, thank God they disappeared. And then, I'm not going to talk about that part yet. There is an episode that is very relevant to the 15 episodes that I will be analyzing. And I will be getting to that. I guess that'll have to be in that separate video. The weakest episodes are the ones, some of them are the ones where the Clampetts go to Pearl's house and won't go back home until she gets married with Mr. Brewster. It's a pretty weak story. At first, it seemed like the story with Pearl was all about her traveling to Beverly Hills. Then it became about Jethreen getting together with that weird guy, Jasper Depew. Then it became about Pearl getting with Mr. Brewster. It's a B story. The problem is you don't know how long they're going to drag it on. The best part is when Jed contrives a fake proposal scenario. The way it plays out is perfect and actually pretty emotional, because Pearl is expected to say no over and over and over again, and Mr. Brewster is so obsessed with acting and theater, he cannot resist proposing over and over until he gets a yes. It's perfect and one of the best written scenes on the show so far. I just hope they don't throw away the story, like with Clampetts getting servants, Mrs. Drysdale being an alcoholic, etc. Well, they threw the story away. Very disappointing that Pearl doesn't marry Mr. Brewster, especially after finding out Mr. Brewster apparently married someone else later on in the series. And I felt like he was the perfect fit for her. So WTF. I thought that was a terrible decision. You know, the story was perfectly built up with that whole proposal thing. They should have at least kept it to where maybe he would change his mind and get married to her, because then he gets married to somebody else even though he says like he doesn't want to get married. That's fucking stupid. There are some episodes that are just kind of too simple. They just do the same jokes over and over, or similar jokes. You have to pick and choose things to say are good. However, I bet it was great back then when you could count on the show being on all the time. Nowadays, TV shows aren't even TV shows. They're like long movies, and they leave really fast, and you really can't rely on them to come on every week. So I bet people took a lot of comfort in watching this show on a weekly basis. I really have to applaud them for bringing the makers of the theme song onto the show as characters. Usually I find music episodes awful in sitcoms, and for example, in the Andy Griffith Show, the Darlings episodes. Okay, the Darlings come on, they have a conflict, and then they do a stupid country song. That's what I have to say. There were some episodes that fell flat. A lot of the season consisted of 4-parters or longer. But then there were these weekly topic episodes that didn't fit in. They were like the black sheeps of the season. And I think the best stuff in the season were those multi-part stories. Jethreen just disappears from the series. That's a huge flaw. All they had to do was have an episode where she misses that guy and goes back to live with them. Well, they did eventually say where she went and what she was doing, but still, I thought that was really weak. It was clear that the people who made the show realized that it was hard to have Jethro and Jethreen in the mansion together, and so they just had to get rid of her as soon as possible. Like, there were a lot of moments where it was like, why aren't they running into each other or anything? Like, it just felt really like strange. And then probably one of the worst episodes of the season, because it's so lazy, is Jed pays his income tax. This is very reminiscent of the episode of The Office where that Saber guy comes to ask Michael about the company, and we see a clip show. And I guess it was supposed to be like a break episode, but still, it just had like one good joke in it, and other than that, it was like, I don't know what this is for. What's that? Oh, okay, there was one episode too where I kind of felt bad for Jethro because he was losing his voice, kind of like how I am a little bit. It sounds a little strange because mosquitoes bit me in my neck too, and so it's kind of affected my throat a little bit. But I felt bad that he had to be in this episode, even though he sounded like this the whole episode. And it's like, I'm Jethro, and I can't really talk. And it's funny how Mr. Drysdale was absent that episode, too. Like, he was supposed to be in the whole episode, in this baseball episode, and he's not there for some reason. But then at the same time, you have Jethro, and he can't even talk. He sounds like he's having a hard time. There is an actual excuse for Jethrine being gone, and it just took one line. It just took one line for them to explain why she's gone and what she's doing. I thought that the Clampetts and Court episode might be the best episode of the season. The events were highly improbable, but it was just hilarious. It was so good that I immediately rewatched the episode after I watched it the first time. And then there is one of the stock music, or I don't know if it's stock music, but there's this like cutesy keyboard music that they use sometimes in the background, and I really, really hate it because it just gets so annoying. Like, they just use like the same music over and over, and it's really noticeable. But it's just one song that I didn't like. And I have another note for next video about Granny, which will be very interesting. And then, let's see. Yep. I'm just scrolling through notes I already talked about. It's funny, too, how the show predicted these mentally ill people who think that they're dogs and other people like them. That was pretty funny. So overall, I'm just going to name a couple of episodes I thought were the better ones and why, and then some of the ones I thought were the worst ones and why. So the best ones, The Great Feud, I thought was a highlight episode. It was really interesting how it felt almost like a finale, and it felt like, this could get really serious, this conflict. And then the episode where Jed rescues Pearl, and they have the whole proposal scenario. In fact, I thought that the proposal thing, the fake proposal, I thought that was the best moment of the whole season. And then Ellie's Animals, I thought that was a perfect episode. I loved how she just got all these animals and like the swimming cat and all these different kinds of dogs and everything, and then she beat up the people in the pound or whatever, and she was in the cage with the dog. And then Jed buys the freeway. I thought that was an incredible episode with that con man and the way that they were able to finally tell at the end that he was a faker. And I really liked that episode, how they showed all these iconic places around Beverly Hills. And then Jed becomes a banker. What was that one? I just have to refresh my memory really quickly. Oh, okay. Yeah, the one about the shooting competition, that one was really good. Because in that one, it seemed like it really felt like unfair that Mr. Drysdale was going to cheat like this, and then it was really hilarious that at the end they thought that Granny was a maid working at or a scrub or whatever they called her. So then he ends up getting to cheat anyway. That was really funny. And then Jed cuts the family tree. Which one was that? Oh, okay. The one with the one where Jed pretends like they're not the first people who entered America. This one was a great episode because it was another very positive episode, and I loved how Mrs. Drysdale was forced to do chores and how she was forced to intermingle with them. And I loved how at the end he didn't want to take the credit for being, these famous ancestors, because he's like, I wouldn't know what to say if I had to talk to the president. I don't know what I'd say if I had to give a speech. And I felt like that was really good, that little part at the end. See, that would be an example of where I thought that his morals really shine through. And then the baseball episode with the Dodgers, I thought that that was a perfect episode. Very funny. And then what was the entertain one? Oh, okay. And then the one where they want to cheer up Granny, and then they invite the Drysdales over, and then that one guy comes over instead, and he's like this rich guy, and he thinks that they're just having a hillbilly theme party. That one was really good. The one where they go to court is the best one of the season. I mean, it is so funny that there's this one part where the actor who plays the judge, he's trying not to laugh so hard that he's almost crying. And he is crying, and you can just see, like, it's like they're torturing him, and it's like he just wants to laugh and he can't, and they just keep showing his face, and it's like, that's how you know that this is an incredible episode of a comedic TV show, is that the actors are having this hard of a time not laughing. Like I've done that a lot on my own videos, and people say not to do that, and it's really hard not to sometimes. And so that one was really good. And then I don't know why I didn't give the one with the singers an A+. Where is that one? Oh, okay. It's Jed Throws a Wing-a-Ding. Or Wing-a-Ding. Yeah, Wing-a-Ding. I really felt like the people who wrote the theme song coming onto the show as characters, I thought that was awesome. That was definitely another highlight episode. Now, as far as bad episodes, Jed's Dilemma, which one was that? Okay, so there was this one episode where it was just all about like Granny and Pearl having a fight over who's going to get to use the kitchen. It was just kind of lame, kind of weak, just kind of like, nah. It was a C+ at best. And then, okay, Granny Spring Tonic. I gave this episode a D for dumb. Basically, the whole episode, it felt like, was just all about Jed hooking up with this random woman, this like sophisticated European woman, and it was just a really weak episode because it was a great concept that she would make the spring tonic, and then all the members of the family would start acting really weirdly and do weird, funny things. But just the whole episode is just focused on like Jed and his romance, and I just thought it was trash. So, and then the second part of the psychiatrist episode I thought was trash. Well, not really trash, but just a C-. It was just really weak how like they were thinking that the psychiatrist wanted to take advantage of Granny, and I just thought it was shitty that it felt really antithetical to their characters, the way that all these situations could just get explained away as to like why they're doing certain things. But every time people try to talk and explain, the Clampets like interrupt them and just assume. And I felt like it was really weak that they had to use that as like a crutch, and that the characters, they could just easily explain away these situations if they were able to get a word in edgewise. And I really didn't like how narrow-minded the Clampetts were acting in that part, and how they're just like pretending like, they obviously know that the psychiatrist is bad, and they know that he's like trying to, molest Ellie Mae and stuff like that. Like, I really didn't like that. I felt like it was, I don't know, they took it a little too far, I think. I guess you'd say it like that. So, in terms of a food rating, this show is a lot like having milk and homemade chocolate chip cookies, which is a very comforting dessert that you can have, and it's something that, you can't really replicate it. Chocolate chip cookies, when they're homemade, they're really good, and they have this pleasant, comforting taste to them. They're not too sweet, and they have a perfect texture. And then to dip them in the milk is just otherworldly good. And I feel like that's what this show is. It's like, this show is like lightning in a bottle with these characters. They're all perfect. They all play their characters perfectly. They all nail the roles. And even though the stories sometimes might not be perfect, like, for instance, Jethro going to school, they made a big deal about him going to school, and then they don't really talk about it at all until like the end of the season, where finally, since Pearl is gone, they have an episode where he has to get a health certificate, and then another episode where a friend from school comes over. And so I felt like that was another thing. But this season was really, really good. I really enjoyed it thoroughly. I would say it is much better than the first season of the Andy Griffith Show. The Andy Griffith Show first season, now that show felt like they were doing stereotypes of like Southern people. This felt a lot more real somehow, even though it was a pretty outlandish concept, I guess. So anyways, please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of the first season, and if you agreed or disagreed with any of the episodes that I liked or disliked. And I will be coming back next week with a thorough analysis on you-know-who's 15 episodes. And please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.